Are we on? All right. Welcome, everyone, to this regular city council meeting for Monday, December 18th, 2023. Maria, would you call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummins,
Here.
Manetza.
Here. We'll start with our invocation to be followed by our pledge of allegiance. Please stand and remain standing for the pledge.
Blessed God, we thank you for bringing us here on this snowy evening. Father, we thank you for keeping us all safe. We know that's a big thing here in Michigan. Lord, we thank you for this group of people and the time that they have devoted towards doing what is best for this community. As we look over the lengthy list on the agenda, we pray that they approach it with an open heart, one that is concerned for the needs of the community, that all selfish prejudices and agendas will be put aside, thinking only of the good of the people here. We pray that as they work through the agenda, there's something that works smoothly with little confrontation, and that they all be in one mind, again, putting the city of Grand Haven first. We thank you for all this, and in your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I would remind everyone that tonight is Cookies for Council. Cookies are out in the other room there. Help yourself anytime you wish or as you go. All right, first item of business is reappointments to boards and commissions. Marie, would you read this?
We have a reappointment for Todd Anthus to the Main Street Downtown Development Authority, term ending June 30th, 2026.
Can I get a motion?
So move.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by McLaughlin, second by Lowe. Questions on the motion? Please call the roll.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes, thank you. At this point, we would have the approval of the consent and regular agendas. If there are, and I'll say again, as I always do, if there are any items on the consent agenda that anyone would like to move to regular new business, this would be the time to do that. But can I have a motion to approve the consent and regular agendas?
I'll make a motion to it.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion by Fritz, second by McLaughlin. Any changes to the agenda?
I have an amendment to the minutes from 11:20.
Well, when we get to the consent agenda, would be a good time to do that.
Yeah, do it now.
We're approving the agendas right now. We're not into the consent agenda yet.
We've historically done it now is when you will make the correction. And then we get to the consent agenda, you'll vote on it as amended.
That's an item within the consent agenda.
Correct.
That's not the
But we
agenda.
vote on it all as a whole.
If that's what you've been doing, then we'll do it that way.
He's about to bust out the book.
Yeah,
I saw.
'cause-
Get the book out.
Well, it's a minor correction.
All
but
right,
I just,
go ahead.
just wanted to call it out. On the first page, or page 6 of the packet, it says, the very last paragraph, it says council, to appoint Councilmember Lowe and Cummins for the next 6 months to start immediately, and we're actually finishing our 6 months through December 31st. And then council members McLaughlin and Fritz will do that for the January through June, right? So I would just like to correct it to reflect what we're actually doing.
Okay, so when we get to approving the consent agenda, then we'll approve this correction.
Or do we approve the correction now?
You can correct it now. We'll have to vote on the consent agenda. This would be an item within it.
As amended?
Okay.
Okay.
So keep track of that. Any other changes to the consent and regular agendas? Okay, would you please call the roll?
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. All right, this is our first call to the audience. first of two opportunities. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, will not have a response at this time. Who would like to speak?
Good evening, Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I just wanted to thank the city people who came out and looked at the my sidewalk ramp on Howard and Lake, which had the negative slope. The last person who came out was our Director of Public Works, Derek Gattos, and it is going to be fixed. So I'm really pleased on that. But I do have a recommendation. During the course of all this, I probably spent a good 12 to 18 hours, and it became apparent that having a negative slope on a sidewalk is not defined, it's not viewed as a hazard, it's not defined as a hazard. So when they go through and they look at the design and so forth, it doesn't pop up as being, you know, something that needs to be looked into. And I think it is definitely a hazard because when you get water flowing from the street up these ramps, it will freeze. I think everybody knows that you can put salt on the street to get it to melt, but eventually that salt gets diluted and it refreezes, and often our sidewalks will be, and the temperatures will be much colder and refreeze that water. And then also, it's a hazard because it allows contaminated street waters to go up the sidewalk ramps and onto our green spaces, and that will allow salt water to percolate down to our aquifers, which is not allowed. So I hope that our departments add that to a list of hazards, so when the designs come in, they check for it. Thanks.
Thank you. Who else would like to address council? We will be having a public hearing later this evening, and you'll have an opportunity to speak to that public hearing at that time. Seeing no one else, we'll move on. Our next item is our consent agenda. Would you care to read that, please?
Item A, approve special work session regular council meeting minutes of November 20 and December 4, 2023. Item B, approve the bills memo in the amount of $1,269,548.65. Item C, approve snow plowing service agreement renewals with Stickney Woods, Sheffel Ridge, and Woodside Drive Neighborhood Associations and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Item D, approve a coastal zone management grant agreement with an award amount of $59,740.32 for Harbor Island redevelopment planning and engagement and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Item E, approve a special event request to hold the Grand Armory Food Truck event in front of the Grand Armory Brewing Company at 17 South 2nd Street as depicted on the submitted map during Grand Armory's hours of operation from December 19th through January 31st, 2024. Item F, approve the Fourth Amendment to the Emergency Medical Services Contract with Trinity Health Grand Haven Hospital and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Item G, approve the 2023 City of Grand Haven Emergency Support Operations Plan and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Item H, adopt the Lake Forest Cemetery Rules and Regulations as recommended by the Cemetery Board. Item I, appoint Krista Jackson of Smith, Howey, Rice, and Rogie as special legal counsel for the purpose of reviewing PFAS litigation and settlement agreements.
Can I get a motion?
So moved?
Support?
Motion by Fritz, second by Lowe. Questions on any item on the consent agenda?
The language in the first should be as amended, correct? On item A?
Of the minutes?
Yes.
I would think that would be appropriate, since we changed them while we were approving the agendas. Anything else? I would like to comment on the Fourth Amendment to the Emergency Medical Services with Trinity Health for ambulance service. We've had a longstanding arrangement previously with North Ottawa, and it's worked out very well. We have a high level of service. I was approached by one constituent that had a complaint on an incident and wondered why if there was other options for other ambulances to respond, and that is addressed in the contract. But I guess my I guess my thought would be that if there's a way to register complaints or anything else in regard to that, who would that go to? Would that go to the chief or to City Hall?
We could field it, but otherwise it would be the hospital.
The hospital would field that? Okay.
Correct.
All right. Well, if there are no other comments, please call the roll.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. All right, at this point, I will open a public hearing. I'll open a public hearing concerning the adoption of the brownfield plan for the Grand Power Works, formerly the diesel plant. The brownfield plan would be for a period of 20 years. Initially, I would invite the applicants to come forward and make a statement about this application, and then we'll invite the public to come up.
Good evening. I'm Roman Wilson with Fishbeck, brownfield consultant representing the developer. Also have Pat Langers, the developer rep here this evening. Just like to briefly go over the brownfield plan. Many of you are familiar with the diesel plant. This is a project that's been going on for quite some time. Back in 19 and 20, there was some due diligence done on this property to assess the environmental conditions. Ottawa County supported that with grant funds to help with the cost of those activities. Those were US EPA brownfield assessment dollars. With that, the site was determined to be a facility, which means that it's contaminated at levels that exceed state criteria. With that basis, knowing that the site is contaminated, the foundation of a brownfield plan was in place. We've had a lot of conversations here recently with respect to an obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act tax abatement, which was approved here recently. That is a component of the brownfield plan. In early December, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority approved or supported a brownfield plan that, as was noted, a 20-year plan, basically 16 years for full developer reimbursement with 4 years on the back end available capture for the city. Essentially, there's 960,000 in eligible activities being requested that would be reimbursed via state and local taxes. With the 8-year tax abatement, local taxes will not be captured at that time, but state taxes would be captured through an Act 381 work plan request, assuming that the brownfield plan is approved. The initial taxable value is presently at zero. This plan demonstrates that the applicant or the brownfield plan would be using next year's taxable value. So there would be taxes that the city would be receiving based on the land and real property value that will be frozen. So there will be tax revenue coming in during that window of time. The eligible activities relate to demolition, lead and asbestos abatement, some infrastructure improvements, some site preparation, and some environmental related to installation of a vapor intrusion mitigation system and related due care documentation of that. The investment is projected a little bit over $9 million, with a estimated taxable value upon completion of roughly $3 million, probably a little bit more than that. And that's the basis of what the new tax increment will, the capture will be based on. And then, assuming that this would continue to go forward, the next step would be submitting this to the state of Michigan, this Act 381 plan, to pursue the state tax capture. Construction anticipated for 2024 with completion in 2025. The initial capture date of this would commence in 25 with, again, 16 years after that, and then the 4 years available for capture for the city for their local brownfield revolving fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak during the public hearing? Any comment or feedback on the brownfield plant proposal? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And we'll move on. So, Marie, would you read the next item?
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve and adopt the brownfield plan for the Grand Power Works former diesel plant project located at 518 South Harbor Drive, Grand Haven, Michigan 49417, for a period of 20 years, and authorize the mayor and the city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Administration recommends approval.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. I make the motion.
Second?
All the spreadsheets, I understand this because
Sure. Yeah,
first
it's a
time.
fun document to look through
a
at
tricky
the
document.
small font, but it is a state template that we have to use, so. The main thing that people migrate towards is usually if we're looking at the TIF called tax increment revenue capture estimates. It was noted a 20-year plan. So what does that mean? Well, if you look at the top part of this, you'll see that the increment that's coming in or that's available is under the kind of the first section there. It's a little hard to describe here, but total state incremental revenue and total local incremental revenue. You'll see those numbers at the top, and that's totaling $23,111 following deposit of certain state taxes that have to go to the state education, or I'm sorry, the SET, the state brownfield fund. And then there will be some administrative fees that the city can capture over time that can be used to administer this. But as you go down, you'll see where it says developer, there's a beginning balance of $960,000. In that column, if you follow that down the column there, you'll see MSF, non-environmental costs, pre-approved costs, and local-only costs, and interest expense. So those, you'll basically see the starting balances, and then as you migrate to the right of the table, each column representing a year, you'll see how much tax increment is coming in, and then how much will be captured to reimburse the expenses over time, and those values start to decrease as you get further along the table, eventually until they're fully reimbursed, which would show for the developer in year 2040. And then following that, in the very bottom, you'll see local brownfield revolving fund with. So what you'll see is essentially the local and state breakdown. The other table that's included as part of this is actually shows the millages, and you'll see the first 8 years of that window there. If you printed it in color, the yellow highlight or the highlighted section, the first 8 years, there's no local tax capture because of the abatement. There's state tax capture there. Once that 8-year window is done, then you can see the full available taxes for capture. I know that's a lot to digest if you're not familiar with it, so any questions, I can help walk you through that.
the GHC operating, I guess that must be Grand Haven City operating? Is that what
Yes.
that means?
Yes.
So it amounts to $374,478. Is this over and above what we've already granted for the Oprah?
Yes. And again, that's through year 20, so 4 years of that would be for the local fund.
About 180,000. Okay, a couple other questions. Who determines the 5% interest that the developer gets of 337, and what is it based?
That's a common percentage that's permitted by the state, and it's commonly used.
But is it arbitrary?
Nope, the authority has the ability to select what percentage they want.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
It could be 1%.
could be one. Mhm.
Okay. Here's my problem, not with you. I had asked for, a number of questions back in November. And some of those questions I thought were pretty easy to answer. And out of nowhere, it came up, all my answers came up on your proposal. I had asked the developers to give us what the estimate was for land as is today. Couldn't tell me. Now you tell me it's $499,000, whatever it is. And then I asked for the as-is, the after. And all of a sudden, that came up at $3.2 million. It just bothers me that we don't take the time as a city to put the whole deal together. So we know what we're giving away. We're giving away $1.3 million to the developer, plus what we gave them in taxes. And that was never presented to us for any type of consideration. If we do this again, and I'm not blaming Ashley or Tim or anybody on this staff, but if we do this again, let's get our stuff together, because this is crazy. To sit here and let this come in pieces on a project this big and not having the decency to give this council the information that they need. I sat at that EDC meeting. There wasn't one question asked about this, not one. And somehow they got the proposal the same day they voted on it. It took me a long time to go through this. So, either we're going to do this right in the city, or we're going to keep giving away money. We've been doing it forever. And it's about time we stop. Thanks. I'm done.
Thank you, Kevin. Who else?
I'm happy to go, yep.
Oh.
Thank you, Ashley. I had asked a number of questions, over the weekend, so thank you to the team for your responses. I've reviewed them prior to the meeting. I understand that the resolution that's in our packet references an Exhibit A, and that's essentially going to be the brownfield plan that's presented, which makes total sense. One of the things that raised my eyebrow as I was looking through this was, there's some money spent on facade demolition. And it wasn't, very clear within the brownfield plan what exactly that was referring to. And I just want to make sure that just for, I guess, the community's sake, that we're all on the same page. We have a meeting that's being recorded, and my understanding is that based on the response, that essentially the kind of smaller attached structures on the northern side of the building are what you're talking about as far as facade demolition. Is that correct? Correct. Okay.
Would you like him to come to the podium?
Yeah, just a week.
Would
Yep.
you please come to the podium and introduce yourself?
Kyle Engbers, Lakewood Construction.
Thank you.
Okay. And my understanding is that nothing on what we would probably consider the main front facade right along the street is, aside from the stairs and then obviously the windows we've discussed previously,
Correct.
are going to be.
The stairs will get removed, and then we got to facilitate a handicap ramp that'll curl around the building to the north.
Okay.
And then also window demolition.
Okay.
But the facade demo that's noted is really, that note was related to where the green paneling is.
Yep.
Where that crane comes out the
Yep.
building. It's kind of reworking that whole area.
Okay.
And I think in addition to that, clearly noted in the brownfield plan, it notes the stack, the silo, and some
Yep.
of those small little structures.
Okay. I just want to clarify exactly what you meant by,
No, good
by
question.
facade, so.
Good question.
And certainly I understood, that there was a planning commission approval of this as well, and my concern in general was that we have an agreement here that essentially states that, well, this agreement kind of almost trumps prior agreements that we had, and I didn't want an argument later that, well, you agreed in this agreement to get rid of the facade potentially, and obviously planning commission approvals can expire, and so I didn't want us to be in that position, but it sounds like we're still all on the same page, so. Related to the, just the plan in general, I think this came up a little bit with the Oprah. I just want to double check with you, Ron, that there's no issue with the our local brownfield authority or with the city of Grand Haven approving a brownfield plan, considering the fact that per our charter, our electric utility is a department of the city, and essentially the city, through that department, is the polluter essentially of the site. So there's no legal issue with the city being involved with approving this brownfield plan.
No, the goal of the statute is to find a way to eliminate pollution. And that goal is accomplished regardless of who the polluter is. That isn't the issue. The issue is cleaning it up.
Okay. All right. And so another question that kind of popped up in my mind with the Oprah that we approved. Obviously, during the first 8 years, there's not any local capture because that's the current Oprah period. But then there's the option to extend that for 4 additional years. So if the Oprah is extended an additional 4 years, I assume, I guess what happens? How's that process works? Right now, obviously, there's an extra 4 years that are being proposed, for our local brownfield revolving fund to capture dollars. They just essentially have to move aside, obviously, and then where does this plan come back and have to be amended formally, or what's that process look like?
I won't necessarily speak for the development team, but my assumption would be there'd be an amendment at that point in time to the brownfield plan.
Okay.
Roman or Kyle may suggest otherwise.
Yeah, as you know, there's a development and reimbursement agreement that would be associated with the brownfield plan, but yeah, at that point, there would be an amendment. Basically, at this moment in time, the kind of end date is 16 years.
Yep.
So if that were adjusted, then there would either need to be amendment or, I'm sure there would be conversation as to what that would look like, based on the extension or whether, because without that capture, then, those eligible activities obviously aren't going to be, there's not going to be a resource to pay for that.
It's reimbursement, yep.
Yep.
Yep, okay. And then, so the extra 4 years for our local brownfield revolving fund, if I recall correctly from the last 1 or 2 that we did, we did something similar where I think we go up to 5 years or something like that, if I recall correctly. And I remember the discussion at the time being that it's optional, and the city, my understanding at least, was that the city later could choose to not capture that those additional dollars into the revolving fund. Is that accurate? And if it is, what does that process look like? Who did, is it a city council in the future that could come back and say we want to modify this? Because the agreement's between the brownfield authority and the developer, or is it the local brownfield authority that would come back to the city and say, hey, do you want us to capture this additional time, these additional dollars for the next so many years like you initially intended?
Are you talking about the LBRF capture?
Correct.
The brownfield revolving plan?
Correct.
Yeah, I guess I don't know that I can say with a level of confidence what that process would look like. Bob or Mayor Manetz may have seen that happen in previous plans, but I do believe it's accurate. You can choose or elect to not take advantage of that opportunity within these agreements. I don't know if either Emily or Mike or Mayor Manetz, you have any history of having seen that happen.
I don't think
As
I've
far
ever
as-
seen it. I don't think I've seen it pass on it. The resolution tonight would approve it, and it would fall into place and be captured unless city council passed on it, but I think at that point in time, the city could say, we're not reimbursing anyone else except feeding into our LBRF fund. And if we chose not to, I think that could be something council could deal with, because no one else would be involved other than council and its own funds. So I believe that a simple resolution of council could stop it. But, you know, that money is captured and put into a fund which could be used to help offset costs for other brownfields in the future.
So, yeah, I get the purpose and.
So I think it'd be a simple matter of saying, we're done.
I agree, that would be a council decision at that time.
Okay. So the Brownfield Authority themselves can say, well, no, we want, you approved this already, we're capturing these dollars into our revolving fund and,
They can give you their thoughts,
okay.
but it'd be.
All right, well, that makes it clear then. All right.
Yeah, because for 16 years, you're reimbursing costs that the developer paid up
Yep,
front.
totally makes sense, yeah.
And so that's an agreement with them.
Right.
The rest of it is basically our opportunity that I think we have plenty of discretion over.
Yeah, it comes back to us here, the same thing we did whether we're at the Grand Haven Brass. And when that TIF got done, we took the captured money for that, and council voted on it to extend that and move that money over to help pay off the debt on the Grand Landing ahead of time.
Right.
Comes to council, and so council did that.
Okay.
We moved forward with it.
So, you know, the fund has value, but if there's a greater value perceived at that time, council could say, we won't collect it.
Okay.
And I think at that point, if I'm reading this correctly, that you're no longer capturing the state taxes. I think that's a local tax only capture. Am I correct, Roman? For the LBRF, you're not capturing the state taxes at that point.
You are.
You are?
That's kind of the
Okay, I
benefit.
misunderstood.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, that's a good thing then.
Right, yeah. And from all the other locals that, as well,
Well,
there's pros and cons.
The state is great at coming up with plans for local governments to fund all the incentives
yeah.
without much state help.
Right. Well, that's why we let other taxing jurisdictions know, although we rarely hear from them, but I at least formally. So,
Absolutely.
I understand some of their concerns in general. And I guess I would echo some of Kevin's comments in the sense that you know, having a full picture is helpful. I understood that when you were here for the Oprah that certainly there was a, you know, hey, this is what we're planning on as far as financing. Certainly, we knew that you were coming with a brownfield request. I don't know that it specified. I know you were looking at a brownfield loan from the states, and I think you were waiting on MEDC grants. I don't know that it specified exactly how much, even you know, of a brownfield plan you were going to be asking for necessarily. So,
1,000.
what's that?
It was 600,000. The brownfield in the pro forma was 600,000.
That was, I think, a bridge loan that they were,
No,
brownfield bridge loan that they were asking for.
Whatever, but it's still 600 to 1.3, so $700,000 showed up someplace.
Well, if that's the case, then, I mean, obviously, I think it's worthy of further discussion. But I think the interest comment, you know, is interesting because, you know, for 8 years on this, we're saying, okay, we're with the Oprah, you know, the value is locked in, and so there's no local taxes to actually capture for us to even reimburse you on, but yet we're essentially going to let you charge us, essentially interest is going to be charged on that we'll have to pay back. That this seems a little bit odd to me that we're paying interest on dollars that, you know, if we didn't have the Oprah there, we could do some reimbursement, have this paid back sooner, and not have as much interest cost. So, you know, perhaps the interest level is worth some discussion.
Karen?
Yeah, I am generally also in favor of approving this. I think this is exactly what we need the brownfield for. There is, unlike some other sites, I feel like there's a lot more evidence and proven contamination and the need for the brownfield funds and the cleanup and appropriate request that has been appropriately reviewed by the brownfield redevelopment. I am concerned about the interest. The interest rate does concern me a little bit, but I will say one thing. I I do agree with Councilmember McLaughlin that going forward, we want to be at this point in terms of the information that we have. And I think this is a huge improvement upon what we have gotten in the past, but I think we'd like it all up front as opposed to trickling in order to kind of come to decisions. But I'm still favorably disposed to approving this.
Okay, thanks. Mike?
I'm with you, Karen. I'm in favor of moving forward with this. For the simple fact is, that it's a brownfield. It needs to be doing. That's one of the tools that we have to use forward, to moving forward to help develop these areas. These are all approved by the state. What you have to, everything's regulated by the state on what they can ask for and what it has to go for. And so it's going to be a good improvement for us. It's going to have a large tax base when it's done. Right now, as it was before, we had zero taxes coming in. Now they're going to at least be able to capture what the value is on this brownfield plan. So capture something more so than nothing, so. And I think we'll have a nice project when we're done. It'll be saving the building. It won't be torn down. We'll have a part of our history that's still here yet and see it. And that's what the people wanted, so I'm going to move forward with this myself.
All right, thanks. And I guess my comment would be that I would very much like to have a faster, smoother, more streamlined process as well. It would be more understandable. Some of the delays come from identifying the eligible costs. Brownfields are based on reimbursement of eligible costs. They're funded upfront by the developer and refunded over years through taxes collected. The only obligation by the city is to collect those taxes and reimburse them. If the taxes aren't there, they don't get reimbursed. I think the interest, and I may have misunderstood exactly how this plays into it, but the presumption is that the applicant, the developer, has incurred interest costs by financing upfront and is seeking that as part of the reimbursement. The 5% is, I've seen that, usually it's 5%, usually when it comes to EDC. Occasionally it gets questioned, not often, it's usually passed through as such, because it's, there again, it's based on estimated reimbursements for the developer for fixing on a number in the brownfield plan, so it's, the brownfield plan isn't obligated to anything else, so if rates go up or down, we're kind of locked in at that level. The one thing about the question was raised about if the OPRA abatement is extended, what happens to those numbers? I think what happens is that all these reimbursement numbers that we see in the chart here are based on the estimated property values and estimated taxes. And they do a conservative estimate on these so that they make sure they don't run out of time before the plan ends and that they get reimbursed, because if the taxes don't come in fast enough, then potentially they wouldn't get reimbursed for all their expenses. So probably what you'd find is they would rebalance the spreadsheet at that point if they got more years on the OPRA, and it would show up as whatever taxes can be collected for the remaining years, and that's what the reimbursement would be. And presumably, if this was conservative enough chart as put together, there's room for that. I think that one of the frustrations and one of the delays and one of the things that's been confusing for us is this concept of layering these incentives on top of one another. The OPRA was passed, and then if that hadn't been passed and this brownfield had been pursued, it would look different than this. So it couldn't have been brought to us until they knew that the OPRA was in place. In fact, it may not have come forward at all at that point without the OPRA. Or if the OPRA had been for some other number of years, there would have been other numbers on this chart. So I think it was necessary to have that piece, or they would have been presenting us with multiple charts of scenarios that may or may not happen. So I can understand that there had to be an extra meeting of the EDC Brownfield Board to review the Brownfield TIF after the OPRA was approved. I apologize, I was unable to attend that meeting, but I understand that it was presented in a manner that was satisfactory to the EDC BRA Board, and that's why it's before us tonight. I don't really have a lot of other comment. We talked a little bit about the LBRF, the Brownfield Revolving Fund, which is a pot of money that we can capture taxes put into to help other projects. It has come in handy, it's been useful to us. I don't know if we currently have a balance in that. That's probably something Emily would know, but it's not terribly relevant to this discussion, but it is a resource that the city can build and use over time to help with other brownfields. And believe me, the city has plenty of opportunity for brownfield investment. So I think that's a positive for us in the long run. In the short run, we'll get a small amount of taxes that we never got. The city will not incur any debt in this. We don't have to pay, we're not borrowing money. The city isn't obligated to borrow and repay money, so it's more a matter of our taxes won't grow on this particular site because all those taxes will be captured and repaid. So that's the downside for this for the city. It doesn't cost us any of our current revenue. It doesn't allow our revenue to grow, at least not much. Once the TIF kicks in, the debt millages are not captured. So the debt millages that we have on the books, once the abatement ends, we start collecting and keeping money for that. So there's a positive there. There's always a trade-off with these incentives. I think that the real prize here is not the taxes we collect or fail to collect. The real prize is we come away with a project which is both successful, contributes to the economy, employs people, and is a plus for the community overall. And I think the taxes have to be viewed as a means of getting there, but not necessarily our main objective. I don't think it's the city's main objective to do things to collect taxes. I think it's the city's main objective to have a vibrant community with all the amenities and all the features and all the cultural pieces that the community expects. I think, in my judgment, this promotes that. So, any other comments? Questions?
Just another question on the interest. The Michigan Strategic Fund, my understanding is that they don't necessarily have to obviously approve the interest. Have you had talks with them already about this particular plan that's coming? I think you talked with.
Yeah, we've been talking to the local or regional contact for quite some time. There actually is a request for grant assistance as well. So part of the plan is then to, obviously, if this were to go through, is to submit this information and, really they look at local skin in the game, and that is the basis of how they will support this. So, yeah, we've had discussion.
Right, and looking at proportionality and that sort of thing.
Right.
Right, so,
Yep.
right. So if they say, like, okay, we're willing to do the other, everything else, but we're not willing to do interest on this one, does that have to come back then for us to review?
Yeah, I mean, there's possibility that, yeah, there would have to be an amendment if that would be the case.
Okay.
When would we know that?
It's hard to say. It could be 2 to 4 months, something like that. It's a process now to get them all the documentation they need and then wait for their feedback.
Anything else, Ryan?
No, just the interest still bothers me, but that's all right.
Okay.
So,
Any other
Can
comments?
we make an amendment to the plan to take the interest down from 5% to 2.5%? Can we do that?
You can.
I make that motion then.
I have a motion by McLaughlin to alter the interest rate from 5% to 2.5%. Is there a second?
I'll second it so we can just at least have some discussion on it.
Second by Cummins? Okay.
I think I've pretty much stated my case.
Okay, well, we're having discussion on it.
Yeah, and I think for me, again, it just seems odd to me that we don't have any of the local dollars to start reimbursing that portion for at least 8 years, but yet we're going to have, 5% interest on that. That extends things, right? That increases or increases the amount of local reimbursements, local tax reimbursement, and extends the time as well. To me, it just seems just odd in my mind to do that, but
So these are layered incentives.
Right.
So the eligible activity costs will still be incurred, and the interest is related to those. All along, the abatement and the TIF together is what makes the project happen. And so, the reason that the interest is there is because there's real interest cost on carrying that, which is far greater than 5%. I don't know what the interest is on there, but to have a bridge loan as well as regular financing for the project, it's a significant burden, and that's why those are layered that way and why there's that interest rate.
Any other discussion on this proposed amendment?
No, I'm okay with leaving it as is.
Are we ready to vote on the amendment? Please call the roll.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Cummins,
yes.
Fritz,
No.
Lowe,
No.
Manetza.
No.
This amendment fails.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on the main motion? Please call the roll.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
No.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes.
This motion passes.
Thank you. All right. Next item, please.
New business item A, consideration by City Council of a buy-sell agreement with Capstone for the purchase, preservation, and development of city property located at 18-20 North Fifth Street and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Administration recommends approval.
Can I get a motion?
So move.
And support.
Motion by McLaughlin, second by Fritz. Discussion on this item.
I took a look, obviously, reviewed the agreement. I think it meets everything that we're looking for. My understanding is that they're gonna try to take possession as soon as possible, which is good for us. And I encourage city council to approve this purchase and sale agreement.
Anyone else?
For the most part, I don't have really too many concerns with the agreement. I personally am not happy with the earnest deposit terms. I think essentially it's not an earnest deposit at all because, for any of the contingencies that are listed, certainly you could submit a notice to withdraw and essentially, unless it's past the initial period, the earnest dollars are returned. And I think a lot of what's there as far as contingencies seem to be pretty normal, what you would expect in a process after you enter into a buy-sell agreement as far as things that you would check on. And I think the purpose of the earnest dollars are to, the property's locked up. We're not able to pursue any other options. And then obviously you have time and costs involved as well. So I'd like to see the earnest deposit language modified a bit related to that. And then my other concern, and it just seemed to get clunky to me, but so one of the warranties of us as a seller is that we're selling it without knowledge as to the presence on the premises of any toxic or hazardous substances or of any underground storage tanks. And then there's a separate provision that says that, they're taking the premises as is, except as otherwise provided for in paragraph 14, which is in our warranties. And in this case, we know there's at least asbestos. I'm not sure what else may have come up in that evaluation that the BLP did. I I don't know, this is probably more of a legal question for Ron. Ron, if obviously they're buying it as is, and Ashley had indicated, well, we're going to attach the BLP's, and, report on what they had found with this agreement. Do the warranties need to be updated to reflect that, other than the hazardous substances that are known in that report, that we're not aware of any others? Or does that warranty somehow, could that be an issue for us later on?
I don't believe that it does. I think that it's part of the record.
Okay, so that's clear enough.
Yeah.
Even though we're essentially we have a warranty that says we're not aware of hazardous substances, at least by.
Because we didn't conduct the study and a potential buyer did it.
Yeah, we're not going to buy in, or we're not going to warrant the accuracy of anything else. We're saying what we know based on our own study. This is what we're willing to express.
Right. My concern is that language right now says that there's not any toxic or hazardous substances.
Yeah,
So
and
to me, it just seems like those provisions are conflicting a little bit in our agreement, but.
Yeah, I understand your perspective, and I think the intention in conversations with the Ron's associate that we worked with in drafting this was that it was anything in excess of what was in the exhibit of the environmental report that BLP obtained on our behalf.
Okay.
So if you're more comfortable with that, we can modify that language slightly, but the intent was that we are not aware as far as any hazardous substances in excess of what has been reported.
Right. That
Yeah.
would make total sense to me, and I assume these gentlemen already are aware there's asbestos in there, and that was part of a report that the BLP. Are you aware of that? Or are you not aware of that? Okay, so they're not exactly aware. I want to make sure that they're fully aware in an agreement that we're signing.
Would either of you
so-
care to come to the podium and speak? Introduce yourselves.
I'm David Tenkate. I'm here with John for Capstone Real Estate. I guess a couple of things. Yes, the city has provided us with some recent reports that show the existence of some asbestos, so we know that's there.
Okay.
The warranty about underground storage tanks, we believe is accurate.
Right, yeah.
But we haven't seen anything that says it's not, and I don't think the city has anything that would say it's not, or they wouldn't, the city attorney wouldn't have let that language stand. So I think that what we're aware of, I don't believe what we're aware of today puts the city in violation of the warranties that are already in its agreement.
Okay. Well, then I'm satisfied.
I would like to address Mr. Cummins' concern about the earnest money. In my experience, I've been doing commercial real estate for almost 30 years, and I've done, I believe, 2 transactions where earnest money is non-refundable. Earnest money is almost always refundable because when a buyer comes in, they don't know much about the property, and it gives them an opportunity to say, oh, what do we have here? Is there a structural deficiency, which you normally don't get when you do a showing or two? We have been given the access to the building a couple of times, but we don't have even all the city's pre-existing due diligence. We've asked for it, but we don't have it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think, I mean, no offense, but I think it would be incredibly unusual and honestly really unfair to ask a buyer to make a non-refundable deposit before we've had a chance to do really any due diligence but walk through a couple of times. That's my opinion, not just as a buyer, but as a real estate professional. Yeah. I don't know if you have any other questions, or I can.
All done?
Yeah, I'm done with mine.
Okay. And for example, if in the course of your due diligence period, you discovered that underground storage tank that we said wasn't there, you might want to withdraw and take your money back.
Or at least figure out how we can address that. I mean,
Understood.
necessarily mean you
We need to come to the microphone.
surprise to us that we hadn't budgeted for.
I'm being slightly facetious, but I mean, that would be an instance of withdrawing.
Oh.
Okay.
Right. Well, I don't think, what's the point of having earnest money at all? There's no point in having it then.
Well, I think it would be,
What's the point? Seriously, if it's totally refundable and anybody can walk away at any time, then what's the point of it?
You need to come to the microphone so people
yeah,
can hear
nobody
the
on the radio can
conversation.
hear you.
All right.
We're on the radio and that's all.
Number one, a contract has to have some underlying consideration to be valid. Otherwise, everybody makes promises and there's no underlying consideration. That's one reason. Another is to just show that you're dealing with a buyer who can rub a couple of nickels together, if nothing else. Now, I think everybody here knows that, we could do this deal if we come to terms, but not always are you dealing with two parties who know each other, have any familiarity with each other.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
And I did indicate to our city manager, I thought the contingency related to the land division, I think that's a bigger risk that really isn't on you, that's more on us, because, the agreement says that we have to take care of the land division. I think there's a lot of questions related to that have to be worked through, and that seemed reasonable to me, but that's just, I'm just one, so
Yeah.
that's just my perspective, so.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Karen, any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess, I've been really conflicted on this overall. And it's not in part due to anything you all have, put together. It really has more to do with our process. With this particular property, we seem to be in a big rush to make a decision. And, unlike Chinook Pier and unlike the diesel plant, we didn't go through, get any kind of, community input as to what they wanted, et cetera. And we only had one, proposal in a time period to me that seemed very, very rushed. But, that said, I don't have, I don't have any objections to what you came up with within those, the constraints. You responded to the proposal. I just felt in general this was a very rushed process and we didn't take a step back. But I'm not opposed to what's been proposed and with moving forward with the buy-sell.
Right, thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
Mike?
I'm with Kevin here. I looked it over and it looks pretty good. The only thing I don't like, as I said before, is I like to keep the campus looking like the campus is today. I like to have the brick on the side there instead of cement board or anything else that you might want to put up there. It just doesn't appeal to me, and I've had a lot of people in town saying they would like to keep it kind of looking all one. We got the Central Park Place, we have this building, and everything else around here is all brick, even the old telephone company and that. It would be nice, instead of having the design that you have here, is there any way you can modify that and put some brick on there for us so that people can rest assured that it looks nice there? That's my opinion. I just want to keep our campus looking the way it should be looking.
John Rohice, Capstone. We don't have a problem with that. The drawing was a conceptual design that we submitted last time.
I understand
It's
it,
not
but
gonna
people
be the
saw
final
this
look.
and then what they tell me is they saying, well, it won't look good in our campus here.
Sure.
It would be really nice.
We will bid it with brick.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. I guess for my part, I wasn't part of the process when the RFQ went out and when the proposal came back and was looked at council. I was sitting in the back row about where Mr. Tinkate sits and watching all this. So I rewatched the video the other day so I could remind myself how council approached this. It seemed like a pretty quick process to me as well, and I was a little surprised that council didn't insist on having more than one proposal. But the instruction was given to administration, go ahead and figure out a buy-sell agreement, which we have in front of us. I think it addresses many of our concerns. And I think that to Mike's point and to Karen's point, I think that good design will make this into a good project. I think that what's been proposed is that the old fire barn will look like it does now. It'll be restored and it'll look good and it'll look historically correct. and the interior would be modified for modern use, and that's how buildings get repurposed and get new life. That the addition over the garage, the conceptual drawing was not particularly attractive. But I think what it did tell us was that the height, the bulk, the mass of the building is not out of place. It's no more, in fact, it's less than the Bell Telephone building next to us here. But the difference between that conceptual drawing and what we have next to us is the facade materials, the design details, the things that make it look like it belongs in the campus. And so I would like to see, and I think we just heard a reasonable assurance that those sorts of details would be looked to, because I think you have an opportunity to make a really good project and something that'll be a nice legacy. So I'm looking forward to that aspect of it. We did have in here that you'll have to be reviewed by our historical commission. I think that they would like to, and we have people on the historical commission who are very much in tune with those details. And it sounds to me like Mr. Grudeis and Mr. Tinkade are sensitive to that, and that they are local people who would like to see this campus look the way it should, look good, and have a project that we're all proud of. So based on the idea that we have that we have some of this built into our buy-sell agreement. I think we have an understanding as to what council would like to see there. And we have an understanding of some of the concern in the community that we'll get something that looks somewhat out of place. We hope not to see that. Based on that, I think that I'd be ready to support this.
Your Honor?
Yes.
One additional comment. Based on our current ordinance, because it is a local landmark, it's not a nice to have, but it must be reviewed by the Historic District Commission, just to be clear, in case that wasn't clear before as a local. Okay.
Right.
Right. I just wanted to clarify, you mentioned there's
Well,
some people on it, well, the actual entire commission has to review it and approve
They
it.
do. I think that there could potentially be a disconnect between the historical fire barn and the more modern garage behind it, where the addition would be.
Right.
So I'd like to see this reviewed as a single project as opposed to those two pieces. I'm not sure that the historical designation was that comprehensive to where that included the more modern garage that public safety currently uses.
No, typically they use the National Park Service recommendations for rehabilitation, so they're looking at the primary facades of the original building. And I think you guys are all over that and in sync, I believe, with the appropriate people on the Historic District Commission. But it does have to formally go through that process.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with Chad, I
Yeah.
believe his name is, so I think we're all on the same page.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other comments? Anything else from staff? Please call the roll.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. Next item, please.
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve the fee schedule amendments for special events and the boat launch as presented effective January 1, 2024 through December 31, 2024, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents.
Can I get a motion?
So move.
Second?
Motion by McLaughlin, second by Lowe. Ashley, would you care to explain this, or who would
Yeah.
do that?
Dana will.
Dana's coming forward.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. And for those at home, my name is Dana Culloware. I'm the Special Events and Project Manager for the city. So during the last budget update, there was some discussion and suggestion by staff to consider updating the fee schedule for special events and the boat launch, more the seasonal type activities on an annual basis, a calendar basis, and fiscal year. And that was with the intention of improving communication and transparency well in advance of the primary summer season where those fees would be applicable. We have event organizers in particular that are planning their events now and working out their budgets versus partway through the season, making some changes to the budget that might be, or the fee for services that might be affecting. So the thought process here was to try to provide better communication more far in advance for their planning purposes. So that's the intention of this recommendation.
Are these fees substantially different from what's in the current budget?
Not primarily. There are a few changes that are being recommended to really align with, again, some past discussions with City Council. We do take a look at the actual cost for services for for-profit businesses that are looking to host events, and then the ideal rate for nonprofits and residents was 50% of that. That was the direction that staff was given. However, we had some rates that were not at that amount, and council's request at that time was to be bumping it up each time at a figure of 20% each year until it reached the 50%. So there are a few on that list that will now be at that 50% rate of the actual cost for services. So we tried to highlight those in yellow that we're making changes. So you'll see a few that are just being changed for nonprofits, but that's to come in line with that direction of a 50% of the actual cost for the service for for-profit businesses, if that makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just got a question.
Sure.
We waive fees for some of the special events, nonprofits. And I guess my question is, a lot of those and I've brought this up to Ashley, so I'm not, it's nothing she hasn't heard before, but, you know, every single one of these, I shouldn't say every single, but a lot of the not-for-profits are now serving alcohol, you know, as part of the event. I see no reason why we are waiving fees when they are selling alcohol. Because obviously they're making a little bit more money off the alcohol when they don't, you know, in comparison to when they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I don't know if we do it here but I think we should do something pretty soon. At least have City Council consider that, not waiving that fee if in fact they are serving alcohol.
Thank you, Kevin. That would be conducted, in my opinion, in a policy update.
Okay.
Because that's where we do have that identified, that option for asking for a discount on the facility or the public space rental, just so everyone's aware.
Okay.
It's not on the fee for services, but on like rental of a park, rental of an actual facility like Mulligan's Lodge or something like that, and it is capped. But to your point, that would be something we would consider with a policy update.
So when do you think that will happen? Because we don't want to, you know, we don't want to start talking about 24.
Right.
And all of a sudden it jumps to 25 and we lose the whole year, that's all.
Yep, if that's something that there's interest in hearing more about, we can do that in January. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. I'm good with this.
Other comments, questions?
I just appreciate the due diligence to look at the actual cost and personnel time and recoup those costs.
Yeah, likewise, thank you for following up, because it's something that we want to make sure that we do have our fully loaded costs. We understand what they are and that we're recouping them, particularly on the for-profit, but to be in line with the 50% for the not-for-profit as well.
I think that these are based on actual costs as opposed to rental of a facility, which is somewhat easier to overlook or to forgive or to waive. But these are costs that we actually incur.
Right.
And so they should be reimbursed, at least to the extent that we're doing that. We sometimes, well, quite often when we waive fees, it's done on a case-by-case basis. And I know I've commented on this in years past, that sometimes it seems to be a little bit arbitrary, or it seems to be something we don't have a real method for. But there again, it's a case-by-case, but that's different from something where there's an actual cost to point at. And that's what we're dealing with here.
We have an actual policy now. That's just, yeah.
Okay.
So we did
Right.
work on
Yeah.
that, you know.
I've been away for a couple of years.
Right, so I'll let you know, yeah, 'cause, well, a lot of it was because of your comments and concerns previously. I think that carried over, you know, to the
good.
next council, that we
Good
thought it
follow-
was a
good
little
follow-through.
arbitrary, or wasn't, you know, so there is a policy that they follow diligently now,
All right, well, thank you for that. Other comments, questions, ready to vote? Please call the roll.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes,
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. All right, well, that concludes our new business, and we are ready for a report by city council. Who would like to go first?
To wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Come on, Mike, you gotta say something. You gotta say something. It wouldn't be like you.
Anybody else?
I don't have anything other than to say Merry Christmas to everybody. Hope everyone has a happy and safe holiday.
I'll say something then, okay.
There you go.
There you go, Kevin, I will. We recently had a I always call it appreciation dinner, and that for all our employees, and I tell you what, it was a fantastic turnout by everybody. It was by far one of the largest crowds we've had there since then. And we had, was it Dr. Rolfs, was it, that did all the catering? And all our employees keep telling me how great it was. Even I went down on second shift, I was down there, I brought the food down and sat down there with them, had dinner with them, and they're just going, wow. Even the ribs that were cold, they said tasted good, and after they put it in the microwave, it was even better yet, but it was fantastic. And they want to say thank you to city council and everybody and administration, everybody that did put that on for them. They stressed that very heavily to me, so. Also, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas out there and a Happy New Year, and hope everything, make it a safe holiday and peace on earth, I hope, someday.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll just touch on a couple things. Appreciate the East End Association and our staff for their work on their kind of second annual Carol and Lights. It was a lighter crowd this year than it was the first year, but it still happened, so that's good to see. I attended the Momentum Center's open house in the former Rendezvous building, so it's coming along great, and they've just had huge success with their capital campaign, and they've kind of shifted to the next phase. They need a few more dollars to kind of do the next phase, and so really grateful for the work that the Momentum Center does for our community. Attended the open house for the community energy plan, so thank you to the staff and our sustainability and energy committee and the folks who are working on the subcommittee and all the others that volunteered to host booths and gather information. It seemed like a really strong turnout and really great collaboration amongst our different municipalities, with the township and Ferrysburg also hosting events and working on this all together. A lot of folks seemed excited about this, and I am too, but good work on our staff's part in applying for grant dollars for Sluka Field, and we were one of two in West Michigan. I think North Muskegon was the other one or something like that received grant dollars. So that's huge. We were one of two communities, and all of West Michigan selected. So a good way to leverage our fund balance that we have in our general fund. So appreciate that. Bummer to see the depot building hits, but other than that, I think that's all I have. So,
All right, thanks. And I also attended the Community Energy Plan open house. And I'm glad we got a decent turnout for that. Hopefully, we gathered some good feedback from the community on that. And I also witnessed, or didn't witness, but I saw the hole in the side of the depot. That's kind of distressing, because it's not just the hole in the side of the depot that you see. That whole wall is pushed back, and so there's like a 25-foot length of wall that's going to have to be completely taken down and re-bricked, because they can't straighten it out any other way. And so we'll have to save all the bricks, because it's the only thing that looks like that is the bricks that are there. So that's unfortunate, but we will get through it. Fortunately, no one was hurt. I would like to shout out to Jennifer Smelker of our Planning Commission. She attained a So people volunteer to be on planning commission or other boards and commissions. And sometimes they take it to heart and they get all the training they can get and they embrace the role. And Jennifer took her citizen planner training, took the additional training and test and did a presentation to the planning commission to become a master citizen planner, which is a Michigan State University extension designation. It's a certificate and it's kind of a big deal. So congratulations on that. And that's pretty much what I've got. Ashley.
First and foremost, just wanted to call to the public's attention in case it was highlighted over briefly or too quickly, but we did approve tonight on the consent agenda a grant agreement with the Coastal Zone Management Program for the future use Harbor Island planning. So it's been a little bit delayed. I know the public's been anxiously awaiting our future use planning efforts. So we should be able to kick that off early 2024. Very excited for that. And in conjunction with that, if you just make sure you check out our new Harbor Island website. If you click the link on our existing website, it'll bring you to the newly developed website by HDR, and updates will be provided there as well in that capacity. And then also just a reminder of our New Year's Eve event. So things will look a little different this year. As I mentioned last time, we'll have live music, a little bit bigger of a fireworks show, and hopefully a really great crowd. And just wanted to highlight city staff, including Dana and Tim, who have worked diligently on this, but also our Public Works and Public Safety, who will be spending their evenings volunteering in this capacity, but also our great business community who have all come together to help sponsor this show. As we all know, it's a little more expensive than previous years. So midnight, music starts at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Fireworks at midnight, I should say. Music starts at 9 o'clock.
And New Year's actually rolls over at midnight though.
Correct.
Okay, I got that part.
Yeah, it's the important part.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, well, thank you. So this brings us to our second call to the audience. There's a second opportunity. Members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address. Will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration. We will not have a response at this time.
Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I'd like to thank a couple of the councilmen up there for their comments this evening. One is Councilman McLaughlin, because I think a lot of the community has seen that there's a need for vast improvement on the way we're doing city sales and so forth. The diesel project started, and we heard as late as, I'm looking off an MLive article from June 14th, 2023, and they're talking about the original project cost was 5.4 million, now it's up to 9 million. Yet, as all this has changed, Kevin, or Councilman McLaughlin had brought up 2 times specifically asking the developer, will there be any more costs for the city? Will there be any more costs for the city? The answer was no, no. And then when it was finally finalized on May 12th of this year, all of a sudden we started to see a whole lot more information. And I think on any future project, we need to see a lot more information from developers on a timely basis. Putting it off until the end and then going for additional city asks, I don't think is professional. I think they need to spend the time to develop the costs and get them out and keep council and keep the community updated properly, which I don't believe was done. And I'd just like to thank Councilman Fritz for bringing up the bricking issue. Again, I don't think having it needed to be brought up at the last minute is what we want. I think we need to be following up on these in a lot more detail than we have been. We should have gotten the conceptual drawings much closer to what they needed to be. And I really thank you for getting the brick there, because we don't need some kind of modern looking apartments, or no, are they condos now? They're condos now in the campus. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll close this call to the audience. And I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So move.
And second it.
Motion by McLaughlin, second by Fritz. Please call a roll.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins.
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. All right, when we come back from closed session, we will just simply close the meeting, but we do that in open session.